dietitian in 1999. So I have 24 years of experience. I owned a consulting company, or my private company. I owned it, and I had probably 7 or 8 different companies that I worked with. About 2013, when I started, when I became a professor, I stopped doing so much of my consulting practice, but I still run an obesity management practice, and I still have some contracts with school districts. I have sat on the top panels in the field of nutrition. I was on the specialty panel in 2012, which is a panel of board certified specialists which makes decisions about specialization. I'm an accreditation reviewer for the Accreditation Council for Nutrition and Education and Dietetics, which is the accrediting body that accredits all programs. And I was on the ballot this year to become a board member. I'm on the editorial board of the Journal of Renal Nutrition, which is one of the highest impact nutrition journals, especially in terms of clinical nutrition. And I'm on the Health Equity Advisory Committee of the National Kidney Foundation. So I have experience as a practitioner or a clinician and as a professor. But how much nutrition do you have or have you taken so far? How many of you have taken at least introductory to nutrition? All right, so 4 people have taken introductory to nutrition. So, okay, so that kind of gives me an idea of where to begin. So, at the end of the day, nutrition, this is important what I'm about to say, is about ingestion, digestion, absorption, metabolism, and excretion. Ingestion, digestion, absorption, metabolism, and excretion of nutrients. Now, what do y'all say? What is your little thing for drugs, for pharmaceutical agents?
Absorption.
Yeah, you have a little acronym, right? And what is it?
AME.
Which stands for?
Absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion.
Okay, so it's very similar. I just talk about ingestion, right? You have many different ways that you deliver your agents, right? You can do it subcutaneous, you can do it intravenous, you can do percutaneous, you can do it oral, you can do it via nasal. So there's many different ways that you can deliver a drug or a pharmaceutical agent. For nutrition, it's coming in the mouth. So it's the ingestion, okay? Digestion begins as soon as you start chewing. Chewing is part of the digestion process. Once you start chewing, your tongue and your mouth begins to secrete mucus, saliva. And in that saliva are some enzymes that begin to break down carbohydrates. Chewing or mastication begins to break down cell walls. So then the digestion process begins in the mouth. Okay? So ingestion, I eat. Digestion, I chew, I swallow. It goes down my esophagus. It goes past my upper esophageal sphincter muscle, down into my stomach through my lower esophageal sphincter muscle. Right? So this is the esophagus. What sits right here by the esophagus? Trachea. What prevents food from going down?
The epiglottis.
The epiglottis, right? So then all of this is part of nutrition. Chewing, swallowing is part of nutrition. We cover diseases of the upper GI, right? So so then once I swallow, your esophagus has these huge muscles. Okay? Some are horizontal, right? Some are vertical, but they contract and they move food down into my stomach. Then at the top of my stomach, there's a muscle called the lower esophageal sphincter muscle. And the lower esophageal sphincter muscle prevents food from coming out of my stomach into my esophagus. Now, the reason this is important is because there's acid, hydrochloric acid, in my stomach. Who can tell me why? Why is there hydrochloric acid in my stomach?
Or digested enzymes.
Not quite, but almost. Huh? Say that. Okay, to protect, yes. But that's part of the immune system, the immune function of the GI system. Good. But why else? Did y'all took biochemistry, right?
It also helps in digestion.
Say that again.
It helps in digestion.
It helps in digestion of what? Good. No, you got the right answer. But what? Break down what? Which foods? So now there's 6 basic nutrients, and I'll get into here, and so that takes us into this chapter. So we'll go. So you have 6 basic nutrients. All right. You have 6 basic nutrients. Water. It has hydrogen and oxygen. It's inorganic, no carbons. You have minerals. They're the simplest nutrients because even water is H2O. Minerals are simple. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, manganese, copper. So all of the minerals are very simple. They're just one, right? It's one molecule. They're on the periodic table, of elements, okay? So you're going to see them there. So minerals are the simplest nutrients and they're inorganic. Vitamins, then, are a little bit higher. They're a little bit more complicated. And vitamins, they are organic. So what this means is that you can't destroy a mineral. I can't destroy sodium. There's no way I can destroy sodium. Okay? Okay, I can suspend sodium. Okay, but I can't destroy sodium. I can't destroy potassium. But you can destroy vitamins because they are organic. So we're not going to get so much into the cooking process and stuff in this class because this is a more clinically oriented class. But if I cook food, I can destroy the vitamins that are in food, but I can't destroy the minerals that are in food. Okay? During processing of food, I can destroy vitamins, but I can't destroy minerals, but I can lose minerals. Okay? So then you have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are organic. Proteins are organic. But the difference between proteins is proteins contain a nitrogen. And from that nitrogen is an amine group, and that makes amino acids. And then lipids, fats, are organic. So when you took biochemistry, you should have studied some things about lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins. What distinguishes lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins from vitamins, minerals, and water, guaranteed, question on the test, is that carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids give calories. They actually give energy. Okay? Carbohydrates give 4 calories per gram. Protein gives 4 calories per gram. Fat gives 9 calories per gram. Vitamins, minerals, and water do not give calories. They do not give energy. But these 6 nutrients are the essential nutrients. So if you have anyone present themselves to you as an expert in nutrition, the most basic question to ask is, what are the 6 nutrients? What are 6 basic nutrients? If they can't fully explain to you what the basic 6 nutrients is, don't listen to anything they say. Now, you can be polite and hear them out, But that's like me asking, that's like me meeting a pharmacist that doesn't know what an NSAID is, right? Or a pharmacy student that doesn't appreciate what an NSAID is. Okay? So, the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are macronutrients. Carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids are macronutrients. Water, vitamins, minerals are micronutrients. I guarantee you that will be on your exam. Macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Micronutrients, water, vitamins, minerals. What separates the two, carbohydrates, proteins, and fat, gives you energy. So now, once I swallow a chicken sandwich, so let's say you have a patient, okay, that patient is a diabetic, you have them on metformin, you talk to them about their meals, and they tell you, I had a chicken sandwich, okay? I had 2 slices of bread. I had 3 ounces of chicken. There was lettuce on it. There was tomato on it. I had a little mayo. I had a little mustard. Okay? When I hear that, I hear 30 grams of carbohydrates. I hear 18 grams of protein. Okay? I hear, what? I don't know, 10, 15, no, maybe not, 10 grams of fat, right? So now, so let's go back to the GI system. So I swallow, I go to the stomach, and hydrochloric acid denatures protein in your stomach. There's 2 things that denature protein. Heat and acid. Heat and acid denatures protein. That's why when you crack an egg, you put it in a pot, the egg turns, the yolk turns white, the white turns solid, it's no longer liquid. That is denaturation. Okay? Now, proteins are very complex. They have 4 different structures. They have primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. I'm not sure how much of that you covered in biochemistry, but they're very complex and they're coiled. And they have these sulfide bridges, right? But when I go into all of this wrapped up a molecule is made up of a sequence of what? Amino acids. And the sequence of amino acid is like spelling a word. So boy is spelled B-O-Y, right? So insulin is spelled valine, tryptophan, lysine, leucine, iso, right? So that's what amino acids do. A sequence of amino acid is what gives the protein its function, its shape, and everything, right? But in order for me to digest it, if the protein is all like this, I can't get to its amino acids to digest it. I have to open it up. And in between, yes, that's what you need HCl for. And in between each amino acid is something called a peptide bond. And those peptide bonds hold the amino acids together. Right? So I swallow this chicken sandwich. It goes into my stomach. The fat separates from everything else. Why? Fat is hydrophobic. And because fat is hydrophobic, it's going to separate in my stomach. Like if you have Italian dressing. You have Italian dressing, the fat and the water separate. You got to shake it up to get them to disperse, right? So the fat and the water is going to separate. Okay? And my stomach is going to make these huge, powerful contractions that's mixing everything up. But what the hydrochloric acid is, it's uncoiling that protein. Now, if the upper esophageal sphincter muscle loses its integrity, it's tight. If it loses its integrity, some of the hydrochloric acid or the gastric acids can leak back into the esophagus, and you have heartburn, right? You can say esophagitis, but you have heartburn. What are you going to do as a pharmacist? What are you going to tell the patient? They have heartburn.
And then I find out how.
What are you going to put them on?
An antibiotic. But you want to find out. You want to find out first, how strong, how long it's been happening to determine what you want to give them.
All right, so walk me through it. It's very mild. It happens every other day or so.
How long?
It might last for 10, 15 minutes.
How does it
How does it what?
When does it happen after food or when you're losing?
It happens right after I eat and when I go to sleep at night.
What makes it worse?
I don't really know.
They're giving you something over the counter.
Huh?
They're giving him something over the counter.
Yes, I eat spicy foods. I eat fried fish. I eat ice cream sundae.
Have you taken any routine?
Have I taken any?
You can't use that word with him. He's a layman. Don't use that word.
Well, let's go to the report.
Have you
What?
taken any non-prescription medicine or diet?
Have I taken any non-prescription?
Yeah.
I take Tums.
Yes. You take Tums?
I take Tums. Sometimes.
So then you need something stronger.
So you're going to put them on some kind of antacid. You're going to go through it. What I'm going to do is review the foods that do two things. Foods that delay gastric emptying. So certain foods are going to make your stomach empty slower. If it makes your stomach empty slower, it's going to increase your likelihood of indigestion. I'm also going to talk to you about foods that affect the sphincter pressure. The integrity of the lower esophageal sphincter muscle. Things like caffeine and peppermints and things like that. So I'm going to talk about fat because fat delays gastric emptying. It's going to make you stay longer. I'm going to talk about spices because spicy foods are going to be much more they're going to be an irritant. I'm going to talk to you about caffeine and chocolate and peppermints because it affects the integrity of the lower esophageal sphincter muscle. And most of the time, if I can get to them before you, they'll never get to you. They'll never have to come to you because I can manage it through nutrition. If they are obese, we start to talk about weight loss because the weight here causes additional pressure here. I counsel them about eating 2 hours before they go to sleep, not to have anything, because gravity will help keep the pressures off the esophageal sphincter muscle. But if they have to lay down, at least prop their head up at least 45 degrees or so to decrease this pressure. Okay? So then this acid is happening in the stomach. Your stomach is growling and it's contracting and it's pushing food through the pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter is the sphincter muscle at the end of the stomach. And small amounts of the stuff in the stomach is called chyme. Small amounts are released into the small intestine. Why doesn't it burn the small intestine?
So it's
Not just that. Why else? Huh? Talking about the cilia? Not really. Good guess. You just told me what you would do to address heartburn. Okay? You would, so Tums and all this, they're called antacids, you said, right? Mm-hmm. What does an antacid do?
Suppress the acid.
But how?
You have to fix the pepper
Right, so they accept these hydrogens, right? Okay. Now, so what happens is your pancreas produces bicarbonate. Okay? And when the acidic contents of the stomach gets into your small intestine, the pancreas will release bicarbonate. And the sensor, the receptors at the beginning, right after your pyloric sphincter, in the three parts of your intestine, the small intestine. Who remembers what they are? The three parts of the small intestine.
Ileum,
Duodenum,
ileum,
jejunum,
jejunum,
and ileum. Right. I call it DJ ill. That's how my patients always, my students always remember it. He's an ill DJ. It's corny, but it works. Right? Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. So when the acid gets into the duodenum, the sensory perceptions, the sensory receptors then cause the intestine to release this your pancreas to release this bicarbonate, which neutralizes the acid. Then it all starts to pour into the small intestine. Now, sometimes if I have, like I've had certain kinds of diseases of the small intestine, which we'll get to, it interferes with this whole process. Right? And I'm not really going to go through it today because it's beyond an entry-level discussion. But in each part, in the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, different vitamins and minerals are absorbed. So two things are happening in the intestine. Digestion and absorption. Digestion and absorption. So I'm digesting the food, then I'm absorbing the food. Now, enzymes that are produced by your pancreas, lipases, amylases, and proteases, they begin to break down the bonds in carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. In carbohydrates, they're going to take complex carbohydrates and break them down into monosaccharides. When you took biochemistry, did you study monosaccharides?
Yes.
What are the monosaccharides? It's not. So it's glucose, lactose, and maltose. Okay. Sucrose is actually a disaccharide. One glucose and one fructose. Right? But at the end of the day, that's what I break them down to. I break all carbohydrates down to glucose and fructose. And then it's absorbed. Okay? Except fiber. Fiber is a carbohydrate. But it can't be digested. I call it the scrub brush of the colon. As a dietitian, I'm worried about going in. I said ingestion, digestion, absorption, metabolism, and excretion. I don't have a conversation where I don't talk about your stools. Are you constipated? Are your stools bulky? Are they soft? Are they easy to pass? Because I can tell a whole lot about your dietary habits by your stooling habits. So that's part of the conversation that I have. So fiber is a non-digestible carbohydrate. And some fiber is insoluble, and some fiber is soluble. And this is extremely important. All right, so let me back up. So now I'm digesting these proteins, I'm digesting these fats, I'm digesting these carbohydrates, but the fat is still separated from the water. How do I get the fat down into the water so it can be digested? Emulsifier. What is the emulsifier? So yes, emulsifier. But what does your body produce as an emulsifier? Huh? What'd you say? I heard it. What'd you say?
Bile.
Good. Bile is produced where? And bile is produced in the liver.
Liver, yes.
And it's stored where?
In God.
In the gallbladder. So it's produced in the liver, it's stored in the gallbladder, and whenever you eat fats, bile is released to emulsify. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, he worked for me. Yeah. I didn't recognize you for a second.
I was wondering, you were calling this over here.
No, I got you. We're gonna publish that study too.
Okay,
You're still good. Yeah. I ain't forgot about you. Yeah, I believe we'll be publishing it's not on March, April. I missed it. A's? What do you like by osmosis? You just you're gonna get an A because you close to it? All right. So bile then circles. It circles the fat. Bile circles the fat, so you have this fat up here. Okay? You have this water. It's called like an aqueous solution, right?
excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
For clarity, HCl does not only break down proteins, but also the food macro.
Yeah, we mentioned that. That's part of the digestion. That's part of the immune function. But we're mainly talking about nutrition. Okay. So the bile is going to encircle the fat, and it's going to bring it down here to let it be suspended. Then the lipases are going to get to the fat, and it's going to break them down to fatty acids. Okay. And then so carbs are going to be broken down to simple sugars. Protein is going to be broken down to amino acids. And lipids are going to be broken down to fatty acids. Okay? And yes, glucose and fructose are the main two of the simple sugars, are the monosaccharides. Now, and y'all can't see that, so who had the marker? Where the marker? Let's see how good you can throw. Now, if you bust me in the eye and I'm like, all right. So carbs, they're going to equal to your glucose. Protein, not that much better. Amino acids, and then fats are lipids. Fatty acids. Oh well, that's no better. So you just have to go by.
That's not the one. That's not the one. We gave you the purple.
I did a switcheroo, didn't you? Good job, you got it. That's okay, it's done. All right. Where are drugs absorbed? When I take them per ox. Where are drugs absorbed? They can be cleared by the liver, they can be cleared by the kidney, but where are they absorbed?
Your intestine.
Okay. And how are they absorbed in the intestine? Now y'all gotta teach me this, because y'all are pharmacy students.
Diffusion.
You tell me about the process. Talk to me about the process of how drugs are absorbed. Y'all have taken this class, y'all have taken a class on drug absorption already? How are drugs absorbed in the stomach or in the small intestine? So they have to have receptors. Then there has to be a binding site. Well, what happens is sometimes nutrients and drugs compete for the same receptors, the same binding sites. And this is what this introduces what's called drug-nutrient interactions. Okay? And that's going to be important for you to know. That's why if you have a patient that may be on a certain cancer drug that has the same receptor as folic acid, it's going to be important for you to refer that patient to the dietitian so the dietitian can educate that patient on adequate sources of folic acid so that the patient will not develop a folic acid deficiency because of the drug. The other thing to be aware of is you have sometimes foods and drugs have competing agendas. What does coumadin do?
It's an anticoagulant.
Oh, come on.
It's a blood what?
Coagulant.
Or somebody said anti what?
Coagulant.
Vitamin K is a coagulant. Vitamin K is produced endogenously by bacteria in your colon. And some of that bacteria can be killed by antibiotics. So I have a patient, who's on coumadin and antibiotic that could potentially, that one, the coumadin is anticoagulant and antibiotic, decrease the endogenous vitamin K production. And I'm worried about two things. What are two things I'm worried about for coumadin? How am I going to assess the efficacy of coumadin? Right? Is it both? You just use INR, you use PT also. PT and INR, right? Which are also the most sensitive markers of liver function. But, so I'm looking at these numbers for them. And I also then realized diet is important. That's why you have to refer them to the dietitian. Because the dietitian is going to understand vitamin K. Because we used to tell patients who were on coumadin, don't eat vitamin K. Avoid all dark green leafy vegetables. But now we realize we're hurting them because there's so many other benefits in vegetables. So your more progressive cardiologists are like, no, let's work with the dietitian and let's adjust the coumadin based on the dietary vitamin K intake so that we're not missing all of the other vitamins and minerals that you can get from vitamin K. All right. So you're in your intestine. The intestine is popping off. The small intestine is an amazing thing, right? It has all these loops. It has all these finger-like projections called villi. And on top of the villi, there's all these other finger-like projections called microvilli. And they're involved in moving food through the intestine. They're involved in selecting the nutrients to be absorbed and all these things. So then, fat's going to get, and I won't, it's not as important, but the lymphatic system and the vascular system both are connected to the intestine. But amino acids are absorbed. They go to the liver, they're processed, they're released into the amino acid pool. Then those amino acids are used for your manufactured protein. To manufacture your cells. Fats are absorbed, and then they go and the fatty acid backbone is used to make things like cholesterol and other things like that. The sugar is absorbed. The sugar goes to your cell, gets absorbed into your cell. and they're used for energy production. So that's the metabolism. Right? So ingestion, I eat it. The digestion, chew, swallow, break down, absorb. It leaves my intestine into my bloodstream. And then excretion. Now let me make a couple points. What is one of the main things that bile is made out of? Bile is made from cholesterol. So your body takes cholesterol and makes bile. So you have a patient that comes in to the doctor, or you might have a relationship with the doctor where you're doing the medication management for this patient. This patient has a total cholesterol of 280. They have an HDL of 33. Their triglycerides are 500. What are you going to do?
Put them on the stack.
You're going to put them on the stack. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I know that, go ahead, what am I going to do?
Get them right.
Get them right, right? You know, omega-3s are important. Good. And omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. Right? And inflammation is one of the major causes of malnutrition. We're not going to really have time in 2 hours to get into that, but inflammation is the key to malnutrition. What I'm going to do is, one, because I know bile is made from cholesterol, I'm going to get rid of bile. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to have the patient eat soluble fiber. Remember I talked about fiber, 2 types? So soluble fiber soaks stuff up. So when I have the patient eat soluble fiber, that soluble fiber is going to soak up cholesterol. And that cholesterol, and that bile, is going to soak up bile. And that bile is going to be removed. And since that bile is removed, my body has to make more bile. So it's going to have to pull from the cholesterol that's already in your body to make more bile. That's why we tell patients with high cholesterol, eat more sources of soluble fiber. And today, now you know, fiber is an undigestible carbohydrate. Okay? Then, I'm going to decrease the saturated fat intake. Because the saturated fat intake has been associated with increased production of cholesterol. Now, that same patient comes back to me 2 weeks from now complaining of constipation. Right? Now, constipation has a couple different presentations. Sometimes it's little small pellets. Okay? Sometimes your stools will look like a corn, like a corn on the ear. Have all these little bumps and stuff like that in it. What are you going to do as a pharmacist if I tell you I have constipation? Good. Excellent. He went straight to nutrition. I'm going to hydrate you. What about after hydration? Huh? Somebody speak if I can't hear you. Sorry. Exercise. Good. Therapeutic lifestyle. Impressed. One of the first classes I've been teaching this class for like 5 years. Y'all one of the first classes that went to therapeutic. All right. What after therapeutic? You're going to send me see the dietitian. We've established that now, right? Mm-hmm. All these conditions, you're going to send me see the dietitian.
I mean, ultimately, you want to do non-farm first.
Okay, but what if the farm doesn't work? What if the non-farm work? What are you going to do? You do a laxative, or what might you do before a laxative? So yeah, you're going to send them to the dietitian.
Right.
So the dietitian can tell them how to do fiber, right? How to increase their fiber intake. How to increase their fiber intake sensibly, too. Because if I'm eating 8 grams of fiber today and I jump to 35 grams tomorrow, I don't want to go out on a date with you. that outcome is not going to be pleasant, right? So you have to kind of gradually increase your fiber intake. All right, good. Then my food leaves the small intestine into the colon. And in the colon, I'm just soaking up water. I'm digesting water. So the other thing I'm going to tell my patient with constipation is, now that I have had a class on nutrition, and I understand the longer stool stays in the colon, the more water is absorbed. And the more water that's absorbed, the more likely constipation is going to result. I'm going to tell them, listen, go. Don't, if you have, when you get the urge, try to use the restroom. Don't hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it. Because if you hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it and hold it, the constipation is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then excretion. And there's two places that we see excretion. We see excretion through the colon route, but we also see excretion through the renal route or the kidney route. Because all of these amino acids, once I break them down, I first form ammonia. Now, when I'm looking at lab values and I see a high ammonia, what do I know? If a patient has high ammonia, what drug are you going to give them? Lactulose, right? But understand the high ammonia is coming from liver function failure. Not failure, but impaired, and it could be failure. Now, there's a couple other labs. You can look at AST, you can look at ALT, which will tell you there's liver damage. But then you can look at things like ammonia, bilirubin, albumin to tell you about liver function, right? So, once the body processes ammonia, the body takes ammonia and makes it into what? So, on the lab value, what am I going to see? Nitrogen. So, what lab value is that? Huh? Bun, urea, nitrogen, right? Then, what's the alternate fate of that bun? The ultimate fate of bun. What's going to happen to it eventually? Okay, how? Who said it? I heard you. Renal excretion. Right? So then that's how I'm going to know if the kidneys are functioning. If the kidneys are functioning well, then my bun's going to be normal. If I have either acute kidney injury or if I have chronic kidney disease, my bun and my creatinine may be elevated. So now, a patient as you. So now, the kidney has all these things called nephrons, and the nephrons are concentrating urine. They concentrate this bun to get it out the body. The kidneys control potassium. The kidneys control calcium. The kidneys control acids, right? Or pH, or hydrogen ion concentration. The kidney controls phosphorus, right? So the kidney does all these things, right? From a nutritional perspective, the more water you give the kidneys, the less work they have to do. If there's plenty of water, they don't have to work so hard to concentrate those nitrogenous waste products. So, a patient tells you, well, how can I help my kidneys? Depending on the level of function, I give you water. Now, let's walk through this. You have a patient with stage 2 or stage 3 chronic kidney disease. They have edema. They have +3 or +4 edema. Okay. Their bun is their bun is 48. Their bun is 48, I'll say 50. Their bun is 50, their creatinine is 2.5. What meds may you see this patient on? Huh? They're going to be on a diuretic, right? Because I have to get that water off them, right? And what are you going to tell them in terms of their diet? Other than seeing the dietitian. You may need a potassium supplement, right? But as a dietitian, I'm going to try to give it to them in their diet. The reason why is because vegetables, dark greens and others are very high in potassium, right? So it's very easy for the doctor, okay, I'm just going to put them on a supplement. They take the supplement, they won't miss the supplement, it's going to keep it up. And as a dietitian, I want them to get all the other benefits of the vegetables. I want them to get the other vitamins and minerals. I want them to get the fiber. I want them to get the phytochemicals and all those things. So I'm going to want to put them on higher potassium foods. And that can be tricky because there comes a point in kidney disease when your potassium starts to run high. Then I have to restrict the potassium in your diet. Okay. So you're going to be on a diuretic. You're going to send them to me. You're going to say, watch your sodium. Go see the dietitian because the dietitian can tell you where all the hidden sodium is. The dietitian can tell you the 14 or 15 different ways sodium is going to be labeled on the food label. The dietitian is going to tell you which foods are high, low, which foods are manageable, portion sizes, and the dietitian is going to be able to determine if and when you can use a salt substitute because often salt substitutes are made out of potassium. And for a chronic kidney disease patient, that's a challenge. All right, so let's summarize your basic nutrition course. I gave you a whole semester in about an hour. 6 basic nutrients. What are they? Water. Vitamin. Mineral. Carbohydrate. Fat. Protein. Good. These are essential. Meaning you have to get them from an external source. Now, let's go on with your review. Carbohydrates are broken down to?
Fatty acids.
Carbohydrates are broken down to?
I'm sorry.
But no, but what you're saying is important because we're about to start to talk about obesity. And when your energy needs are 100% met, excess sugar is turned into fatty acids because that's the body's storage form of energy. That's one of our professors, Professor Bell. She'll be teaching some of these courses because we just started a master's degree program. It's going to be 100% online master's of science in nutritional science and dietetics. And I'm going to be teaching a lot of courses in the master's program. So she may be doing some of these lectures for me. So I just invited her so that she can kind of get to know you guys and have these experiences. So what you're saying is very important, right? But so the carbohydrates are broken down to glucose, right? The proteins are going to be broken down to testing. See, the problem is I walk around. See, this is going to make me a less effective lecturer, right?
Is there a clip?
Oh, it was just as short, right? Good. All right. So then to finish, the proteins are broken down to amino acids, and those amino acids are then used to sequence your protein. So the protein that's in your nose, your skin cell in your nose may have been the chicken that you ate. Okay? And then fats are broken down to fatty acids, then they're metabolized, right? They're absorbed and then they're used for different things in the body, right? So now that's just the overview. Now let's go through your diet. Let's go through your GI system. Okay, what happened? So I said Give me the steps. Ingestion. Good. Ingestion, digestion, absorption, metabolism, excretion. Gotta know that. Okay? We'll be on the test. Okay? Now let's talk about in general what happens. What happens in the mouth? And then what? And then mastication, then there's some lipases that are released that begins carbohydrate breakdown. So digestion starts in the mouth. I swallow, it goes down to the stomach. And other than the immune functions of hydrochloric acid, what happens in the stomach? The denaturation of the protein. The protein unfolds, right? So your digestion of protein begins to happen in the stomach, right? Then I leave the stomach into the small intestine. What happens in the small intestine? You complete the digestion process. You finish breaking down protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Then they are absorbed. Once they are absorbed, you use them. So now I have to transition into two things. I have to cover enteral nutrition and obesity. But that's what's on the syllabus. But that gives you just a basic overview of nutrition. Now, I expect to see all of you in an introduction to nutrition class for your elective. I don't know, y'all might not have electives. But I hope that y'all can see you can't do pharmacy without nutrition. You can't separate the two. They're too closely associated. And I hate to say this, and I love to say this. But if they come see me and listen to what I tell them, hopefully they never have to see you.
Right.
They never have to see you. Right? Because if they manage their diabetes by what I tell them, they never have to get on oral hypoglycemic agent. They never have to get on insulin. If they manage their diet through the DASH diet, then lisinopril, probably not. Metoprolol, probably not. Hydrochlorothiazide, probably not. Go ahead.
Do you feel like you are capable of helping reverse the damage that has already been done?
In what? In diabetes?
Like in a disease state. Like if they do what you tell them to do, they don't have to see us. But a lot of times people don't catch it until it's already so far gone. But
Absolutely.
oh, okay.
You're correct. Sometimes all we can do is manage it. We can't
Oh,
prevent it.
just me. Okay.
Right? So like if you have chronic kidney disease stage 3, I'm not gonna get you, I can't regrow those nephrons. Those nephrons are gone.
I just hear a lot of times, you know, when people come to the pharmacy, they say they get on this crazy diet that actually reverse the damage that has been done, especially people who have situations with their kids.
So let's walk through this. Let's take a path. Let's take a walk. Okay? If I cut my hand, what's gonna happen?
You're gonna bleed.
Okay? But eventually the inflammatory process is kicking in, right? I'm gonna form a scab. And you have a scar, right? So we all have scars from when we were kids, right? What happens if I come back the next day and cut that scar again? Then I keep cutting it, and cutting it, and cutting it. The scar is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's say you have a patient come to me with either alcohol or obesity-induced fatty liver. So you have two types of fatty liver. Alcohol fatty liver disease or non-alcohol fatty liver disease. Well, I can't go back and take away those cuts that are already in your liver. But what I can help is to make sure we don't keep scarring it. Because remember, in disease, you compensate. Right? So when I get insulin resistance, right? Y'all walk me through insulin resistance. What happens in insulin resistance?
Like with the body.
Yeah.
So it either stops utilizing the insulin that you're producing.
Now I want y'all to give me the pharmacy student answer. What happens with insulin resistance? You know it. I just gotta walk you through it. You know it very well, right? Because the oral hypoglycemic agents that you give, what do?
They make the insulin more sensitive.
But how? What? No. Beta cells just produce insulin. Right? Good. See, you know the answers, right? Because the receptors, the insulin receptor, that has to stimulate the glucose transporters, right? So insulin is just a key. Insulin shoots in, turns it on. The glucose transporters go to the edge of the cell. Then the sugar and glucose is absorbed into the cell, right? So when you first start to get insulin resistance, the first thing your body does is your beta cells do what? They increase insulin production, right? So then you get hyperinsulinemia, but it's compensated. Compensated means your A1C is 5.4, 5.5, and you're walking around. Okay, let me go get this cheeseburger, this French fries, this Coca-Cola. My A1C 5.4, but hey, I'm still eating, right? But what happens over time is you can no longer compensate, right? Because since I didn't change, my beta cells can't keep that high level of production anymore. It's physiologically impossible. So your body compensates, but your body's like, give me a break. You're killing me, literally. Right? So then I can put you on a diet. I can help you eat in a way that decreases inflammation, right? We can start cutting out saturated fats. We can start cutting out processed refined sugars and all these things that we know through studies are associated with inflammation. That's the other thing. If whoever you're talking to, they're not up to date with the studies that's been published, 2022, 2021, forget it. If all they're doing is working on a textbook, they're way behind. Because the textbook is 4 or 5 years old. That means there's 5 years worth of studies since the textbook has been published. Right? And then sometimes the textbooks are published from one perspective, and they don't include all the research. Right? So then I start to do everything to one. I want to decrease everything that's contributing to the inflammation that's causing the insulin resistance. So I'm going to get you eating right. I'm going to get you exercising. I'm going to get you sleeping right. Right? Because lack of sleep, I just did a paper. It'll be coming out very recently, very soon. It's been accepted for publication. The paper is called Sleep Apnea and Academic Performance Among Black College Students. And it's of course I wrote it, so I'm a little bit biased. Right? But the whole issue with sleep. So I do everything to decrease the inflammation, to take the burden off your beta cells. So I can't go back and make it as if it never happened, but I can make it where there's not additional destruction. And you can live your life out without having to do a whole lot of drastic measures. But aging happens, telomere length decreases. When telomere length decreases, the integrity of your cells diminish. So with aging, all this stuff is going to go bad anyway, right? But let me get you to 60 or 70 so that you can get chronic kidney disease from your telomere length decreasing as compared to from the high blood pressure you never control. That answer your question? All right. And I'm sorry, when I was saying no, I wasn't, you're not used to me, but that's how I talk to my students. So it's not there's no disrespect in things.
Oh,
go ahead.
Earlier when you said even +3 or +4.
Yes.
Is there like increments to measure that, or?
It's a nursing thing. So that's why we need more interprofessional education activities, because edema is dependent on how deep and how long the impression stays. And if I remember right, it's centimeters. So +1 edema will be 1, +2, 2, +3, 3, +4, 4. Right? And then, all right, okay, so good. So that's how we do it. So now let's do Go ahead. Anybody have any questions?
Was that chapter 8?
Yeah, that's chapter 8. Let me get there. I'll see which one. I did that to distract the others. Okay. I think it's the one that says modified.
Okay.
No, it's going to be Groper. Groper chapter 8. No. It's both of them. See, and I'll tell you why. The Groper is a little more technical. The undernutrition is a little more simple. So I want to give you both. Some things are technical, some things are simple. All right. I have been studying obesity intensely for around 6 years now.
You come up with it here.
You know, after this lecture, everybody will have a much deeper appreciation for obesity. Hopefully. I know that's a little confident of me.
Yeah.
All right. So there's something called resting. How can I explain this? You have bills that you pay every month, right? Your parents might pay them, but in one way or another, you have bills. So say my bills comes out to $2,000 a month. What happens if I only make $1,800? I gotta go find $200 again, right? How many of y'all did the poverty simulation?
We did.
Y'all had some very interesting ways of finding that $200 in the poverty simulation. Well, what happens if I make $2,500 a month?
You have access.
Having some gravy, right? So you have to use a certain amount of calories or energy just to function. If I don't use enough calories, I have to go into my bank, right? Called your fat stores to pull some calories out to make up. So say I use 2,000 calories a day, right? Who has something to drink? Or who has something with some nutrition information? Anybody? That you don't mind sharing? Okay. All right. So this says 230 calories in one pack. Okay. So I need a certain amount of calories just to function in a day. Theoretically, if I need 2,000 calories and I only eat 1,500 calories, I pull the other 500 from my fat stores. If I need 2,000 calories a day and I eat 3,000 calories, that goes into my fat stores. Okay? So, on a very simplified basis, if you don't mind, I'll keep this for a little while. You can get it back up to class.
That's fine.
Trisha teacher came and took my double Vito package. Okay, so this is what this is trying to show you. That you have energy balance equals energy in versus energy out. Imbalance causes weight changes, not simply fat changes. And I'll get to that the most I can. Classic rule, 1 pound of fat equals 3,500 calories. Okay? Now let's put this in perspective. McDonald's or Burger King or someplace recently? Anybody?
Healthy
It's all good. It's all good. Oh, good. Who doesn't mind sharing what you ordered? Go ahead. What'd you order?
So I had a breakfast chicken biscuit this morning.
A breakfast chicken biscuit, good.
And
Hash brown?
and that's it.
Okay, good. Did you have anything to drink with it?
I had a C4, it's like a little drink, because I'm getting ready to work out.
Okay, was there any calories or anything in it?
Yeah.
How much?
I'm not sure.
All right, so let's say the Z-Core gives you 240 calories.
I think it's 150.
It's 150, she's the expert. And how much is the hash brown?
The hash brown?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying about 300.
300 and the biscuit?
Oh, probably around 600.
Okay. Well, let's go 450 biscuit, which will be nice. 450 biscuit, 300 hash browns, and 700. 130, you said?
140.
So that's about 840 calories. So the biscuit itself with the chicken. Is it 390? All right, so 390 plus 120, so that's 490, 510 plus the one, the 300.
40.
No, 300 hash browns, 390 biscuit.
Okay.
So that's 690 plus 120 for the drink, 790, 810, right?
It's 140. Just add 20 more.
All right, so 830. So if I need 1,800 calories a day, and I just ate that, half gone.
It's okay.
She's working out.
Now let's say I got tired and I decided to do a bottle of Coca-Cola to stay awake. I'm gonna add on another 240, maybe 270, right? So 850, 950, 1050. We're 1050, 1120 now. Let's say I have lunch. So that's the challenge that we're facing in terms of obesity. The challenge is just calories alone, without the other issues, right? Like inflammation, like environment, like genetics, like the bacteria that's in your gut, like hormonal imbalances, and all of the different facets that contribute to weight management. If we were to just look at calories alone, our food is so rich and so high in calories today that it favors weight gain. That's why almost 40% of the American population is obese. And almost 60% is overweight. And since we're an HBCU, it's even higher among blacks and African Americans. It's around 78% overweight. So this whole thing with obesity is a major issue. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because, but this is important. But I'm going to put it in a very simple way. When you feel satisfied, stop eating.
That's the problem.
Then you have Prader-Willi syndrome. No, there is. There's a syndrome called Prader-Willi where you, but you never get satisfied. So you just eat.
Until you're full.
Otherwise, you're going to typically get satisfied. Stop eating because it takes a few minutes for the receptors in the stomach to sense fullness. So if you stop eating when you're satisfied, you'll be full 20 minutes from now. What does that mean?
That's what I'm saying.
I feel a little bit in my stomach. So this is the challenge with humans. Most animals don't override. They don't even have the ability to override their satiety signals, right? Humans can. We can be full and still eat. You see a lion, and there's like a huge antelope sitting in front of you. And it only like eat 1/3 of the animal. And the rest of you just sitting there. Right? That's because they don't. They just eat to their food, right? So that's a good question. So you have to learn how to be in tune with your body, how to kind of feel when you're full, some trial and error. Because if you stop eating when you're satisfied, you'll be full in 20 minutes. If you stop eating when you're full, where will you be in 20 minutes?
Stuff.
Be stuffed. Somebody says sleep. What if you stop eating when you're stuffed?
Like reflux coming out.
You're going to be sick in 20 minutes. Right? So that's what this whole slide is about. Around every 4 hours, your body, your stomach empties, but there's a lot of things that influence how much you eat, what you eat, the environment, distractions, atmosphere, friends. You might eat more at a party. You might eat more at a barbecue. So there's a lot of things that are going to influence what you eat, how much you eat, and when you eat. So keep those things in mind. All right. I'm just thinking, because we have, this class ends at 10:50, right? Yeah. Let me see how, to make sure I can make this the most meaningful to you. Okay. So when it comes to how much energy you expend, we all have something called basal metabolism or resting energy expenditure. That accounts for the amount of energy that you use when you're breathing, sitting there. We all have a baseline. And there's certain things that influence that baseline. The amount of muscle that I have. The more muscle that I have, the higher the baseline. Okay. Age. Unfortunately, as I get older, the baseline goes down. Biological birth assigned sex. Biological males tend to have a higher resting expenditure than biological females. Taller people tend to have a higher resting energy expenditure than shorter people. Some of you are like, I didn't need you to tell me that. So all these things kind of affect this. The second is physical activity. If we could get active, it will help the challenges that we're having with obesity tremendously. Let me ask a question. How many of y'all walk intentionally? Not walk across campus, but how many of y'all walk for exercise every day?
Not every day.
It's okay. No. It's okay. How many of y'all walk, and y'all look around, how many of y'all walk for exercise at least 1 day a week? All right, good. How many of y'all walk for exercise at least 2 days a week? All right, significant drop off. How many of y'all walk for exercise at least 3 days a week? What about 4? How many of y'all walk for exercise 4 days a week?
The weather's been a little intense.
Now, y'all take a second. Look around. When we got to walk for exercise 4 days a week, there were only 4 people. Now, there's nothing scientific about this survey I just did. If I sent this to a journal article, they would laugh at me. But, based on our small anecdotal observation here, once we got to walking for exercise 4 days a week, it dropped to 3 people. And the recommendation is at least 5 days a week. So if we just started doing that alone, we would get more healthy, and that could affect our rates of obesity. Go ahead.
On behalf of all of my fellow colleagues, we just don't have time.
You can do 30.
I feel you. I feel you. How many of you eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day?
What's 5 servings?
A half a cup or a piece of fruit or a piece of vegetable. 5 a day.
5 servings.
No, yeah, 5 servings a day. A serving is a half of a cup. So 2.5 cups of fruits and vegetables every day. I'm impressed. I never even had any of my nutrition students do that. She said they're lying.
That's why they get nutrition.
If we could get people, us, everyone, just to start eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, our challenge with obesity will go down. How many of us drink sodas? You drink sodas? If you ginger beer, Hawaiian punch, red Kool-Aid, whatever. Sunny Delight. If you drink one sugary beverage a day, raise your hand. Coffee is included. Orange juice. Unless you don't put sugar. Orange juice.
Honey and tea.
We'll get that later. All right. How many of you drink at least? Now, and I'm talking about a 12-ounce can. I'm not talking about a 44-ounce or 32-ounce. Yes. If you drink like the 32-ounce, that's actually around 4. If you drink just a bottle of Coke, that's actually around 2.5. If we could decrease our intake of Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola, Sprite, Sunny Delight, Kool-Aid, whatever.
Energy drink. Yeah, how does energy drink?
High sugar energy drinks. Because we're 78% overweight. If you're active, you exercise a lot, it's not going to be as big of, I'll answer your question in a second, as big of a concern. But if one of the studies show, the research shows that one of the major contributors to our weight issues is sugary beverages, or beverages with added sugar. Go ahead.
So like a Comvita or a kombucha, is that like considered like kind of sugary?
Just look at the nutrition label and see how many grams of sugar there are. 15 grams of sugar is 1 apple. 15 grams of sugar is 1 orange. 15 grams of sugar is probably a half of a, depends on the size of banana. That one is kind of medium size. These huge bananas like this are about 2 servings, right? A half of that is a serving. So let's think through this. If I drink, how many of you can drink a liter of soda?
In a day?
Be honest.
Throughout the whole day, though, not just that one time.
What is this? What is this?
8 ounces?
No, this is 16 ounces.
16.
This has 4 servings of a sugary beverage. You don't mind if I tell you? If I drink this much soda, it's 4 servings. If I drink this much soda, it's equal to 4 apples or 4 oranges. Hell, probably 12 tomatoes. How many tomatoes? Ms. Bell, how many tomatoes?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Never mind. This much soda, I could probably eat 20 cucumbers.
20 like.
Yeah, cucumbers. They don't have much calories, 25 calories maybe. Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
would it be better to just get Because you know how soda has diet or light? Would it just be better to get the smaller versions of the regular kind?
The more you can decrease your added sugars or replace them with fruits and stuff like that, the better it's going to do for us as a society in terms of managing obesity. Okay? So keep that in mind. How many of you could eat 4 apples at once? If you can drink, come back. If you could drink this much soda in one setting, it's equal to eating 4 apples in the same setting. No. But I did an experiment with my kids. My older kids didn't get no sugar. And they love broccoli and cauliflower and carrots. And the second half of my kids, I don't know what happened. they got some candy and stuff early in life, and it was a completely different story. So yes. You're gonna, as a clinician, I run the patients who tell me, water, I need something sweet, right? So there's approaches to that. But my overall message is, if we can start making some very simple changes as a society in the way we eat and our physical activity, it can go a long way to managing obesity. But now let's make this relevant to you as a pharmacist. What is a glycogen type 1 agonist? Glycogen peptide, glycogen-like peptide. Yeah. Don't give me the pharmacist's answer. Give me the layman's answer. What does it do? I didn't hear you. What else? Say that again. It doesn't let glucose absorb as a glycogen. What happens to the glucose? So, part of the issue we have is there are certain hormones that regulate how our body stores and releases fat. Insulin is one of them. Glycogen is another one. Leptin is one. Ghrelin is one. Cholecystokinin is one. There's all these hormones that are trying to do their job. What happens when we put a patient on metformin? What's one thing that you see happen often when you put them on metformin? Weight loss. Okay, part of it is that, but the other part is the hormones that regulate your fat, they start working. The insulin can start doing its job, right? And so you don't have this hormonal dysregulation. So that's one of the biggest things for weight management. There are so many things that contribute to hormonal dysregulation. Poor diet, lack of physical activity. We just talked about sleep. Okay? Lack of sleep itself is associated with weight gain. But then obstructive sleep apnea. All right. If you snore, go get a sleep study. No, I'm not trying to be funny. This is why I'm being perfectly serious. When I first got the sleep apnea 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, I was completely ignorant of sleep apnea. I had no clue about sleep apnea. But what I've learned since I started studying sleep apnea is every time there's an apneic event, meaning every time you stop breathing, your tissues get deprived of oxygen. When your tissues get deprived of oxygen, this causes inflammation. The inflammation makes your body leptin resistant. Remember when we talked about insulin resistance? And how insulin resistance causes the blood sugar to go high? Well, leptin is a hormone that causes your body to break down fat and to suppress your appetite. So when you aren't sleeping well and your body's deprived of this oxygen, leptin can't do its job. So your body starts to produce more leptin, right? The challenge is leptin is produced by fat cells. So you're growing more fat, you're producing more leptin, but leptin is your body's way of telling itself, stop making fat. Once the fat cells get to a certain level, they're like, stop. So they make leptin. But the leptin goes to the receptor, and it doesn't fit right. So the leptin can't do its job. So the leptin can't stimulate lipolysis, which is the breaking down of fat. So lipogenesis continues to happen, which is the making of fat. Then leptin cannot suppress your appetite. Your appetite continues to be high. And then it also contributes to inflammation, which induces insulin resistance and induces that whole ugly cascade of poor blood sugar. So if I left you just with energy balance, then I haven't done justice for helping you appreciate the complexities of nutrition and the complexities of obesity and managing obesity. We shame people. We shame them because they're obese, you're lazy, you don't have enough discipline. But it's not only diet. Diet is the key. Diet's the central factor. You can't do anything without diet. But there are some people who follow their diet to a T and they're not losing weight. That's because they have hormone-mediated obesity. And their obesity is not necessarily, you have two major drivers of obesity. You have hedonic obesity and you have hormonal obesity. Hedonic obesity, you're eating too much. Hormonal obesity, your hormones are dysregulated and you can't regulate your fat. So that's like, let's say a diabetic gets to the point where even though they're following their diet, their endogenous insulin production is still poor. So you have to put them on an oral hypoglycemic agent, right? So understand this can happen also in terms of weight management. You become so dysregulated that even when you stop eating, even when you start eating better, you're not going to see the results. Okay? So no, remember this: hedonic obesity, hormonal obesity. And both contribute to obesity. The one that contributes more in you is the one we have to target. And diet is the easiest thing to target intuitively. But food is involved in culture, food is involved in religion, food is involved in your definition of self, right? If somebody's having a barbecue in my neighborhood, somebody having a barbecue, everybody knows. I had a friend named Keto. Very interesting name. But Keto's dad would make barbecue. He would make the chicken, then put it in the barbecue sauce. Yeah, and he would leave it in there marinating for around 2 hours. Everybody came to Keto's house barbecue time. Right? You have to have, in my neighborhood, have me some mashed potatoes. No, not mashed potatoes. Have me some potato salad. Well, no potato salad with barbecue. And nobody wants to wipe the barbecue sauce off the meat.
That's crazy.
So because food, and listen, if let's say I'm a Pakistani, I'm gonna do my biryani. Forget you. I can't do biryani. I'm gonna have some gulab jamun. I'm gonna have it. Or my halim. If I'm Arab, don't tell me not to have no baklava. So that's one of the challenges of managing obesity. Is food is so associated with definition. And we always tell people, follow the Mediterranean diet. Well, now you have to teach me how to fit my barbecue chicken, macaroni and cheese, potato salad, and my bread pudding into the Mediterranean diet. How do I do that? So me as a dietitian, I'll be like, no, don't just eat grilled chicken breast, brown rice. And you're like, grilled chicken breast dry, and brown rice is hard. So part of my job as a dietitian professor at an HBCU that's supposed to be all about cultural competence is pushing the message that one of the things that we have to do is help people understand how to enjoy their culture while at the same time being more helpful. All right, so I didn't really do too much on obesity, but I think we have 25 minutes left. And the next thing I'm supposed to cover is tube feeding. Have y'all had the TPN lecture already? Yes. Tell me about TPN.
Parental nutrition.
Tell me about it.
When somebody is
When a patient can ingest something orally, supplemental nutrition without TPN.
So I can feed a TPN, right? What's the nature of... All right, give me some more. What else did you learn from the TPN lecture? So if I can't swallow, and I can't take nothing from my mouth, I get on TPN. What is in a TPN solution? Dextrose, which is the carbohydrate. What else?
protein.
But protein in what way? Amino acids. And what? Lipids. And the lipids come two ways. What are two ways lipids come? You either piggyback it, or it comes 3 in 1, right? Why do you think you do dextrose, amino acids, and lipids? Why do you think you do it that way?
Because there are 3. They're not the 3 main.
They require no digestion or absorption. That's why I can put them directly into your artery. Okay. That's why I can put them in the central line, excuse me. That's why I can put them directly into the central line. Right. Because they require no digestion or anything. But what else is in there? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. These give you your calories. Have amino acids in there. Amino acids make proteins. Proteins are used to make tissue. Proteins are used to make hormones. Proteins are used for enzymes, all those things. Carbohydrates are primarily used for energy. Fat, there's certain essential fatty acids, but I didn't go over, but won't be on the examination. But I have to give the essential fatty acids. I also use fat for energy, and fat, certain vitamins. Okay? I mentioned vitamins. Now make a note of this. I didn't say it earlier. You have vitamins that are fat soluble and vitamins that are water soluble. Write down A, D, E, and K are fat soluble. B and the C complex, C and the B complex are water soluble.
You say it again.
A, D, E, and K. A, D, E, and K are fat soluble. B and the C complex, C and the B complex, are water soluble. So I have to have some fat in there for energy, for some fats my body can't make, so I have to get them from outside. And then I need fat for fat soluble vitamins. So that's in my TPN solution. But in nutrition rehab, we have a rule. If the gut works, use it. The last thing we want to do is go to parenteral nutrition because there's a lot of issues associated with that. You have a risk for refeeding syndrome. Did y'all talk about refeeding syndrome? You also have a high risk for infections. Okay, and those infections can be very serious because they're central line. So we want to feed people. So if I can't feed them, if they don't eat enough, then I'm going to give them enteral nutrition. Okay, or that's tube feeding. Now, as a pharmacist, there's only so much that you're going to go into in terms of trying to understand the different needs and all that. You're going to get that from the dietitian, and you're probably not going to do a whole lot with enteral nutrition. You're mainly going to do parenteral nutrition. But enteral nutrition is one of the things that's on a formulary. So I'm just going to try to do a very brief introduction to enteral nutrition in the next 10 minutes. All right, so the reason we want to feed them, 30 to 50% of hospitalized patients are malnutrition, and 95% of nursing home patients are suffering from some form of malnutrition. 70% of hospitalized patients exhibit a decline in nutritional status when they're hospitalized, and 1/3 of them will suffer from malnutrition. Malnutrition, and this is all fair game for the test. Malnutrition increase your risk of infection, delayed wound healing, and longer hospital stay. Now, what are y'all going to do as a pharmacist? What are you going to do for wound healing? Let's say somebody has either a surgical wound or a decubitus ulcer. Aren't there some ointments and stuff like that that you may use? Say it again. Say that name a little bit louder. I'm not hearing you.
She said Bactroban.
Bactroban. Okay, what does Bactroban do? Okay, so it's an antibiotic ointment. If I have a wound, I definitely want to avoid infection. There's no time for me really to talk about the metabolic consequences of these things and the nutritional consequences of them, because that's a little bit more in detail. So in net, you have a reduced quality of life and increased health care costs. How can you address malnutrition? Specialized oral diets, that's what I do. Supplemental foods, that's what I do. And then enteral parenteral nutrition. You're going to work a lot with the making the formula. I'm going to tell you what to put in it, me or the doctor, and you're going to compound it and make the solution. All right. So, enteral nutrition is defined as deliverance of nutrients to the GI tract distal to the mouth. So, enteral nutrition is not going through the mouth. It's going through a tube, a catheter, or a stoma. It's called tube feeding or enteral feeding. How do I know if I'm going to feed somebody enteral nutrition? If their gut is functioning, you could have just had GI surgery. You could have GI cancer. There's a lot of things that can, one person had like an accident that just shredded their GI system. So there's a number of things that makes it where the GI system doesn't work. It's not working. But if the GI system is functioning and have inadequate oral intake for 7 to 14 days, or if I expect inadequate oral intake to persist for 7 to 14 days, then I give you enteral nutrition. Now, in pediatric patients, if they're unable to obtain 80% of their calories by mouth, or if they require 4 or more hours to eat per day, malnutrition and poor mood. So here's the benefits of here's the advantages of enteral nutrition. It's cost effective, it's cheaper than parenteral nutrition. We can avoid malnutrition and just decrease the length of stay. There's a reduced need for surgical interventions with increased stress on the body's immune system and everything. There's a reduced incidence of infections and complications, including the ill patient, there's improved wound healing, and you maintain the GI function. The disadvantages, tube feeding can be difficult to administer. Sometimes it's poorly tolerated, and then sometimes you can't meet the nutritional needs of some patients. But believe it or not, and you will know this better than me, often the medicine that a patient is on may be causing diarrhea. You got a tube feeding patient is on, may be causing diarrhea, not the tube feeding. If you tube feed a patient and the diarrhea develops, they'll often think it's the tube feeding. But that's where the pharmacist or the dietitian have to work together to determine, are any of these medicines you're taking, are they known to cause diarrhea? And if so, perhaps we shouldn't necessarily just jump on the tube feeding first. Perhaps we should look at some of the medicine. There's 3 types of tube feeding. Nasal gastric, that's when I put the tube down your nose. You can do that bedside, just insert it. There's oral gastric, that goes through the mouth. And then there's nasal intestinal, that goes through the nose all the way post-pyloric. That goes through the stomach into the pyloric. The most common in these would be nasal gastric. Then there's a gastrostomy. This is a tube that that's the tube that gives it to the stomach. Sometimes your stomach is not functioning, so I have to do a jejunostomy. I have to go straight to the jejunum. And obviously, because protein's broken down in the stomach, that's going to be a specialized formula when it goes to the jejunum. Right? I don't have to break it down as far as TPN, but I can't leave it in the form that it will go into the stomach. Okay? You have a surgical gastrostomy. It's a procedure when a surgeon puts a G-tube, just goes right here into the stomach. And then you have a PEG, percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy. Right? And this is when a feeding tube is placed through the skin without a surgical incision, or with the use of an endoscope. I won't go over how to select the routes. That's a little bit much. That's an idea of what an NG tube will look like and the insertion of the NG tube. This is what a PEG tube will look like, and that's a PEG tube. Anything, if I try to cover anything else, it's a waste of. I don't think there's nothing else we can do in 3 minutes that would be truly beneficial. Question?
How we calculate the amount of calories that we need?
Did you cover that in TPN? You're talking about as an individual? Well, if I want to do it scientifically, you have to get a machine that will measure how much oxygen you're producing. That's the only way to be precise. Either the amount of carbon dioxide you're producing or the amount of oxygen you're consuming, not the oxygen you're producing. So that's the only way for me to do it scientifically. Okay? It's called an indirect calorimeter. I get a hood, they put the hood over my head, I breathe in and out in 10, 12 minutes. Then it tells me exactly how much energy I'm using in resting. Okay? You can get another machine that measures your oxygen consumption and where you just breathe in and out of it for 10, 15 minutes, but it's not as precise. Other than that, you just kind of have to look at a chart. That's going to give an estimate based on your name, your age, your height, your weight. It's going to give you an estimate. Or you can use a formula to calculate it. And you can find some of these calculators online. The formulas are notoriously wrong, though. But if you don't have any other way, the only thing you can do is use a formula. Some are pretty good. Any other questions? All right, that means either one or two things. Either it's so terrible that there's no questions to ask, or is it good enough that there's no questions to ask? Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Excuse me.
I don't know if you need to say something. Go ahead.
Do you know how many questions you have on the exam?
I usually have around 10 questions.
And would you mind sending me the
Yes. As soon as Dr. Bobo sends me how many I have, I'll send a review.
Thank you.
Attendance.
10 minutes. Go take it.